Okay, good evening, everyone. We're continuing in the Mesilas Yeshorim. We're talking about late Sonim. We're talking about mockers. And we're talking about how when a person is a mocker, he is not using his brains. When we're not using your brains, then you're going to get yourself in all kinds of trouble. So there's one more thing. We're in the middle of this, and there was a very beautiful piece from the Maharal that relates to this. It all goes together. There are certain, we will call profiles of late Sanim. And I think you'll agree that this is one of them. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says that one of the rabbis, one of the Tanaim, Reb Shimon, said, all the days I grew up amongst the Chachamim and I didn't find anything good for the body like shtika, silence. The best thing I found for the body was silence. So what does that mean? So there's a lot of interesting interpretations, but the Maharal gives a very deep and fascinating one. He says, number one, even amongst the great sages, the Tana says, I found silence to be good for them because that's how they conduct themselves. If you look at real big tzaddikim, they don't talk so much. And the Maharal explains like this: since a human being has a physical body, because he has a physical body, silence is a very good thing for him. Why? Because where does speech come from? Okay, speech comes from certainly the ruach, which is a little bit of a higher level of soul than beyond an animal. It makes you a medaber. And he uses the term nefesh medaberes, the speaking soul, but it's still from the powers of the body. And it's not completely intellectual. Now, there are some people, when they speak, they think a lot. They think a lot of what they're going to say, and a lot of intelligence comes out of their mouth. But it's not necessarily so. And therefore, better not to talk so much, or you won't make so many mistakes. And here's a very important idea. I always thought of this idea. This is the expression I used just to make the words of the Maharal a little user-friendly. When your mouth is in drive, your brain is in park. Better park your mouth and put your brain in drive. That's what I've always said. And now I see the Maharal is supporting that idea. Baruch Hashem. The Maharal is saying, because the mouth is primarily connected to the body, and thought is the intellect. So if he's silent, you're allowing the mind to think. And the intellect and the body are opposites to each other. So therefore, silence is good for the body, is saying the Mishnah. It's not, that there's a lacking in speech, but rather silence is good in order to allow the powers of the intellect to operate. And this comes to teach us that when you're silent, you have time to think. It's impossible for two things to happen at the same time. You can't think and talk at the same time. It doesn't happen. Once you start talking, you stop thinking. And that's why it's always good to prepare what you're going to say before you're going to say it. A lot of times they say there's words that come from the heart. That's okay. You can have words that come from the heart, but don't assume that's coming from your brain. Yeah, a person wants to express his feelings to somebody. That's one thing. But having to make decisions, you don't want them to be coming out of your mouth. And when the person is using the mouth, then the intellect cannot operate. And therefore he's saying it's a good thing for the body to be silent, to let the mind really operate. And if you speak too much, then the mind becomes subjugated to the body. It's like the tail of the fox. and there's no intellect at all. And that's why the Mishnah over there says, I did not find anything good for the body like silence. And this is the biggest siman, almost always. If you see a person speaking too much, it's usually an indicator that he's not so bright. Because the more time you talk, the less time you have to think. The intellectual, the wise person, he wants his intellect to be working much more than his mouth. Now, I think that's a good thing to think about. You know, before I give a class, any class I give, I spend hours thinking before I'm going to say anything to make sure that I'm saying the right thing, write down my thoughts so that I have it clear when I want to say things. Because when my mouth is operating, I'm not thinking that much anymore. So the thought has to be beforehand. And when I've thought and say, okay, this is what I want to say. This is what I want to speak about on Shabbat. This is what I think is appropriate. You know, then you say that. And usually a speaker, you know this with Donald Trump for sure. When does a speaker get in trouble? When he goes off script. You go off script and you just say something that you weren't really thinking about. And that's usually when you're going to say something that's not the appropriate thing to do. So this goes together with leitzanus. Leitzanus usually goes together with a lot of talking because leitzanus is saying that spiritual things, intellectual things don't have any value and you joke about it. And that's only happening because you're not letting the intellect operate. So this becomes another shmirah to leitzanus, is to not to talk so much, not to talk so much. Now, let's continue. And as we mentioned this yesterday, but now he says it very clearly. In the lashon that he uses, the expression is very strong. Ukfar gazru amar chachamim zichron lefracha. He doesn't just say, and our rabbis have said. It says gazru, like it's a decree. So they've said it as a gzeirah, just like you have a decree in the government. The government says, this is the law, you break the law, this is the rule, and this is going to happen, and nothing other than that. So the rabbis, it's like a decree that the Gemara says, Shahalates maybe hayisurin alav. The lates bring suffering upon himself. And this is what's explicitly said in Mishlei from King Solomon. Nachonu laleitzim shvatim. Punishments are prepared, judgments are prepared for the lates. Why? Kizel davar shadin no say no. So this is something that's very logical. Why? Kimi shemispile mina hisponenus mina limudim. If a person is aroused by reflection and by studying, and that moves him to make improvements, then his body does not have to be pained. Kikfar Yoshuv Mechatosav believes that he could do tshuva from his thoughts without having to come out to suffering. Because of the thoughts of tshuva that spring up in his heart, from something that he reads, or sheyishmar, that he listens, from reprimands and rebukes. A person who listens carefully and is willing to listen to sound reason is able to make corrections, and things don't have to go any further than that. But the mockers, they're not impacted by the rebukes. From the power of their mockery. So we don't have anything rational for them to cause them to change. There's no repair except suffering. Because the power of mockery, that has a great power to push away rebukes, does not have the power to deflect genuine suffering. Genuine suffering, you meet it head on. You can't push it away because suffering is a physical thing too. When it's a value, and the value is intellectual, so the mocker will bring down the value with his jokes and say that nothing has any value. But the suffering, you can't joke your way out of suffering, because suffering itself is a physical thing that's extremely painful, and making a joke about suffering isn't going to take the pain away. And that's the end result, because that's the only way to fix things up. The person's not prepared to hear, like we said yesterday with the mule, you got to get their attention first. And there's many Chazal who say it, the terrible things that happen to the person who's the lates. The Gemara in Avodah Zarah says the lates is usually the one who will end up in Gehenna. The one who's the lates is usually the one who his parnasa is taken away from him. The Zohar mentions that those who are sentenced to Gehenna, to the lowest levels of Gehenna, are those who mock other people. And it's very interesting, and you see from many of the Rishonim, and we'll talk more about it tomorrow, Mirz Hashem, that a lates is not merely one who mocks other people, but he says that a lates is also anyone who sits idly by wasting his time. That's how Rabbeinu Yonah learns it in the Mishnah Pirkei Avos. It says two people who sit together and there's no words of Torah between them is a moshav leitzim. Is a moshav leitzim. So it doesn't say two people who are mocking, but it says two people sitting together, schmoozing for an hour or two about nothing really that important. That itself is a mockery. Because if you sit idly by, it's certainly going to cause you not to have so much Yirah Shamayim. Because what is he really mocking? He's mocking his life. Time is life. And when a person has time, and he takes the time that Hashem gives him, and he just schmoozes it away on nothingness. I'm not talking, there's a lot of time reasons to talk. If a person's sad and you want to cheer him up and you want to give someone chizuk, you could speak for 3 hours if you feel it's going to give them chizuk. But that is a positive type of speaking. But if someone just sits around and does nothing, just, watches a television show, because the person says, I need to relax. There's a lot of ways to relax that are much healthier than that. But the fact is, the person is mocking the most valuable thing that exists is your time. You're saying my time isn't worth anything. So if he doesn't value his own time, is there anything greater than that? Nothing. So that everything below is going to be mocked the same way. So therefore, King David is saying, don't be in the company of a moshav leitzim. It's very contagious, as we'll see in the next page in a minute. And Lutzado concludes, Vinay, he says, Vinay, k'vichomer hachet v'toldosav, according to the severity of the sin and its consequences, hichmer hashofet amiti be'onsho. Therefore, Hashem increases the punishment that happens to the person. And that's what the rabbis say. Kasha leitsanus. Mockery is very, very severe. Why? Shetchilasa Yeshorim. It starts with suffering, v'sofo kloya, and it ends with destruction. As Yeshaya says, Shenemar pen yechasku mosreichem, and don't be the mockers, lest your bonds be strengthened. And then for the destruction, I've heard about the decree of destruction that comes from that. So that's where it ends up. So if you don't do tshuva after receiving the sufferings, it just gets worse and worse and worse. If he continues joking about these things and goes away from tshuva, there's nothing else to happen. And that's why the Gemara is saying a person who gives into his late son ends up in Gehenna. That's the only option for them. Okay, that's the second. And now we get to the third. The third thing that takes us away from Zehirus, that doesn't allow us to spend the time to be thinking about things. So far, we've been talking about the antidote of Torah, being busy with a lot of things. That's why if we're reading about it, what the coronavirus was a great blessing in disguise. It's meant to give us a lot of time for Zehirus. Now, for some it is, and for some not. For some people who are not working, And, and so there's less pressure. There's more time to think about things. On the other hand, there's some people that this virus is making you have to work twice as hard to get half as much work done. So the challenge of being so absorbed in making a parnasa is still an issue. The leitzanos, the mocking, all kinds of things. There's a lot of things to be mocking around. That's a big issue. But the third one now is really probably getting understood the most here. And the third detrimental factor is evil company, other people. Dahainu, to be specific, chevras hatipshim v'hachotim, the company of fools and sinners. Fuma sha'kosav omer, this is what King Solomon said, Veroa ksilim yorua, he who befriends the fools, it will be bad for him. We see many times, even after the person, the truth of the responsibility of a person to serve Hashem properly, and the care you have to have. The person agrees, I agree 100%. Still, where does it fall apart? He gets weak in it, or you'll transgress certain specific commandments. Why? You do certain behaviors that you shouldn't do, and it's wrong because you don't want people to mock you. You want to be able to fit into the crowd. So Rabbeinu Yonah is talking about really two ways that you could be influenced by the bad company. The first one, he says, so they won't mock you. That means those of you who are your friends already, you already have friends, you already have a chevra, and you want to start being more careful in your Yiddishkeit. And what happens? What do we know is one of the greatest collateral damages of being a Baal Tshuva? If you are a real, sincere Baal Tshuva, almost always, there can be exceptions, but it's awfully difficult. The first collateral damage is you lose your friends. And if you don't lose your friends, then you're not going to do much tshuva. Because we're very much afraid what people will think. They think I'm weird, they think I'm this, and that holds you back. That's always been one of the biggest issues. Over the years, a man to put on a kippah at work, this is what he's afraid of. He's afraid that people are going to mock him. He knows he should wear a kippah at work. He knows he should have tzitzis on. He knows a lot of things he should do. But he's afraid that other people will mock him. And they'll lose his friends, or he'll lose an opportunity to grow in the business. So that's the first. And the second one is okedeli hisarev, that desire to be accepted by others. He may not have a lot of friends, but he wants to have company. And he knows that if they're going to see he's so careful in his mitzvah observance, then they're not going to want him to be his friends. So this is the new thing. It's the public opinion, whatever you want to call this, that's out there. That is what's going to hold you back from this watchfulness. Because a person, the power to be with other people is stronger than the desire to do the will of Hashem. That's the fact. We're very much drawn to that. If he knows he's going to be mocked for doing a certain mitzvah, he would rather not be mocked. And what kind of chevra of people are we talking about? The chevra is chevra hatipshim v'hachotim. You could tell right away who are the ones that will mock you. The real intelligent people are not going to mock you. They may disagree with you. There's a big difference between disagreeing and mocking. Okay, making fun of. So who will be those who make fun of you? They're fools and sinners. There are people who are fools and not sinners, and there's some who are sinners but not fools. But either way, people are affected by them. And I think what Lutzada was saying is, listen to who you're listening to. You know, he's not saying the chevra, haino, hachachamim, hanevonim, the very smart people. You're afraid you're afraid of fools. You're afraid of sinners because those sinners don't want you to make them look bad. And the fool can't understand what life's all about. These are people who are not guided by reason. And the power of you wanting to be with somebody is so strong, you'd rather be with foolish people, sinful people, and fit into the crowd. And it's one of the most famous Rambams in Hilchos Deis, the most famous Rambams. He says it's the nature of the human character and actions to be influenced by your friends and associates, and you want to be fit into the local norms of behavior. That's the way it is. And therefore the Rambam says you must therefore associate with righteous people and be in the company of wise people to learn from them. And the opposite, and stay away from the wicked people so you won't learn from them. Rambam saying you have to hang around righteous, tzaddikim, and chachamim. That's the ones to make your friends. And that's what we say in the Hirotzon, right at the end of the standing brachas, that Hashem, you should distance me from bad people and bad friends. Such an important idea. This is so important with teenagers. It's so important. You know, I've said it so many times when I've begged parents when they have children in school and they were in schools that were not that religious. And the parents said, you know, they get enough religion from us. And I keep telling him, you got to realize the people that your children will listen more to than anybody else will be their friends and not to you. We have to realize that we cannot be our children's friends. We're not part of their milieu. We are the older generation. They may respect us, but they don't really want to hang around us. They really, most of their behavior that they're seeking approval is not approval from their parents. It's approval from their friends. And therefore, the parents' first job when you're deciding what school to send your children to is, who are the types of friends they will have? Are they friends who are chachamim? Are there friends who care about Yiddishkeit? Their friends practice the hirus? Or is it friends that they may be nice people, but they don't understand the fundamentals of Yiddishkeit? That's such a critical point. The chevra decides everything. And people, things you normally would not do, you will do because of that chevra. Fumash Shlomo Mazer, and this is what Shlomo Melech warns us about. And he says, V'im shonim al tisarev, don't join people who are shonim, people make changes. Ki miyom alecha adam, because a person may say, you know, a lot of people quote you chapter and verse from the Talmud. The Talmud says, La'olam tehei daito shel adam mu'ureves im habrius. A person should always be associated with a fellow man, which means to say, should be a person who can live with all kinds of people. You should be immersed in society. You shouldn't be looked at as a strange person. You should blend in. Person should blend. It's a chazal that says this. So you can say, listen, here's the chevra here, so blend in with us. But these are people who are chevras tipshim mechoitim. So what's the answer? Afata amarlo. Bamed vor mamurim. When does the Gemara say that you have to blend in? It says, Bivnei Adam sha'osim ma'asa Adam, people who act like people. Ach lo b'vnei Adam sha'osim ma'asa behema, but not people who do acts of an animal. Muravim mabrius, with people, not with animals. And many people, you know, that don't act like people. Ushlomer mazerod, and Shlomo Melech warns us more. He says, Lech mineged liish ksil. Go away from the foolish man. V'David HaMelech Omer, famous first pasuk in Tehillim, Asher Yisha Shelo Halach Ba'atzas R'Shoibu B'Moshe Leitzim Liyoshav. He doesn't follow. He doesn't walk in the counsel of the wicked, stand in the way of the sinners, sit in the seat of the scoffers. Ukvar Perishus Zechorman, our rabbis explained, if you notice, the verbs keep moving. It says, forced man does not walk in the counsel. So if he first walks, then it says, or stand in the way of sinners. So Folamo, then he'll end up standing. But then it says, Ubamoshev Leitzim, he shouldn't sit anymore. If he stands, so Yashiv will eventually sit. It's a slippery slope, walking past them and then standing and then sit saying there. A lot of times, there's unfortunately, there's a lot of people in the world who are leitzim. There's a lot of people that can just talk your head off and really just have a lot of things to say and joke around about a lot of things. And you just have to learn those kinds of people. Like when you see them on Shabbos, you say good Shabbos while you're walking, and you keep walking and you don't stop. You'd be surprised what happens. Once you stop, you never know what happens. An hour later, you say, what happened to that hour I had? Certain people, you have to, unfortunately, we should not be judging people, but we have to value our time. And if after you say good Shabbos and the person starts schmoozing with you for things that are really not productive, you got to keep moving on. You can't stay there. The Omer and David Melech says, I did not sit with men of falsehood, etc., etc., nor did I go with hypocrites. I've hated the congregation of evildoers, and I will not sit with the wicked. Stay away from the wrong crowd. And there's a lot of nuances over here that Lutzato's saying when he says go. First says don't join with those who make changes. So the Pashup shot is to change the ways of the Torah. Okay, it says go from before a foolish man. That means not only should you not join the company, you should distance yourself from them. And when it says man, it means not even a lot of people, even one person from a single fool, you should stay away from him. Because any connection with bad people, the smallest amount is going to impact on yourself. Even the walking, the natures, one thing leads to another. Very interesting. The first tour in the Shulchan Aruch, the forerunner of the Shulchan Aruch, starts off by mentioning that a person has to be az kinamer. He's got to be as bold as the leopard. You've got to be brazen. When you're doing your avodas Hashem, you have to have courage. Because a lot of times you want to do a mitzvah and you're afraid of people who will mock you. And he's saying the first halacha, how can you begin? That's really what's saying. We're going to learn about the Shulchan Aruch. We're going to learn the code of Jewish law. We're going to learn what a Jew's supposed to do. So the very first thing the halacha says is, don't worry about public opinion, period. Again, you have to be respectful. You shouldn't be insulting to people, but don't worry what other people say. You want to do a mitzvah, you do it. Now, you don't do it in a way that could cause a chil Hashem, but generally speaking, people will, mock you and make fun of you, and that's not your issue. Your issue is to do the mitzvah and not worry about what they're thinking. Very interesting. Shlomo Melech said in Mishlei, he said like this, better to meet an angry bear than to meet a person who's a fool. Think about this. Imagine a mother bear whose cubs died and she's grieving over that. You don't want to get in front of such a bear there. That bear is going to rip you to shreds. And Shlomo says, better go to an upset bear than to foolish company, which is much more dangerous. And the reason why it is dangerous, because everything you hear from people makes an impact on you. And especially the things you hear in life, certain things get into your mind. It's so hard to get them out. And that's what happens from these people. And you've got to stay away as much as possible. Even though you say, I have nothing to do with these people, I'm not interested in what they're saying. But when you hear things that they say, it makes an impact on a person. The bear, the worst thing the bear could do is kill you, which is bad, but it still doesn't take away your olam haba. But the wrong chevra will totally destroy your olam haba forever. And therefore, you've got to stay away from such people. Okay, time is just about up. We're going to continue with this idea tomorrow. I'll give you some ideas how to try to avoid it. And then we'll go through a very important Mishnah in Pirkei Avos that takes all these ideas and puts them together. And with that, we will, B'ez Hashem, finish this section. And then I got to decide if I want to move on or move in a different direction. We shall see. So anyway, thank you all for listening. I'm going to shut down right now, and then I'm going to come right back in to start the Parsha class.